Hello and welcome everyone to another official recording for the channel for one of the rookie coaching clinics in the SimRacing604 community. For today's video we have a track walkthrough for the upcoming rookie race. The tradition we are hoping to keep continuing alongside the rookie season to help let people get to know all the new tracks and to keep a dialogue open between the coaches and the rookies. During the session, the rookies and the other coaches will be free to ask questions or point out problems that they've been having at any time as we go. This will be followed by an uninterrupted full speed lap for folks to be able to see all the things that we talked about all string together. Just for some context again, the Rookie Series provides all newcomers to the community or sim racing with a fantastic introductory league to start learning and to improve. There is very little pressure and mistakes are actually fantastic. They're not frowned upon. They're seen as an opportunity for everybody to learn. There's really a fantastic atmosphere among the rookies. At the moment, the car of choice is the Lamborghini Super Trofeo as a single make, single car league. This car was chosen because it's a great platform for folks to build from and to progress into leagues with any other car. Something I will add here just before we get going is a quick word about markers. These are references around the track that help orient us to what we need to be doing immediately before, at, or past them. Typically these need to be fixed objects around the track that will not move or get destroyed. Establishing clear markers and then being able to be consistent are your biggest aids in improving. Hope you guys will find the video helpful. All the best. Cheers. Alrighty, well, welcome everybody. So Nürburgring today. Like always, we'll just start with a quick plug about markers and what we'll be talking about. So when we use markers, it's just a reference point on the track, right? That's an indicator to us what to do. Your markers might not be the same as mine. It's whatever you're comfortable with. And the point at which something happens isn't necessarily like right on top of the thing that we're talking about, okay? So even when we say, or even when I say I brake right at this point, there'll be like a little delay. So if you watch the video, sometimes you'll see, oh, but it looks like he's braking after. It's because it takes my brain a second to go from, okay, I'm past it, to my foot doing the thing. And you'll see that too when you're doing stuff. So just be mindful of that the marker is not like a concrete indicator of what to do when. It's just to help you know what you should be doing when you're approaching that area of the track. Alrighty, so Nürburgring is an interesting track. It is like a Grand Prix circuit that's weird and narrow. It's got difficult and easy places to overtake. There's some places where I would say is no-go zones for overtaking. Just back out of it and be patient. And we'll talk about that as we go, okay? So right now, here on the start-finish straight, exiting this corner, really kind of where I was parked before, back there where the barrier starts, is where you should definitely be on the throttle at least a little bit. You kind of slowly get on the throttle as you're coming out of the corner. You'll be in second.
Low tire pressure. Stay
and
clear
it'll
of the curbs.
Push you out wide here. You can use this curb over here. I wouldn't go super wide, but you can use that curb and be full power on that without worrying about spinning. Okay. Down the start finish straight here. Just full speed. The next marker that we're going to worry about is going to be the 100-meter marker board that somebody already conveniently wiped out. So this little runoff track over here is the other marker, which is more concrete because, as you see, it's already gone. So if that was my reference point, I wouldn't know what to do. I usually brake just a little bit ahead before the 100-meter marker board, so probably the side of this little runoff thing that's closest to me is usually my braking point. And there's two ways to approach this. Either you are more in the middle of the track where the pit line is, where you start your braking, or you're out here. It just kind of depends on what you're comfortable with. Either way, it's going to be a straight line, okay? from the pit line, you're going to brake a little bit towards the outside of the track. So you're going to point your nose towards that 50-meter marker board and brake towards that. If you're where I am, you're just going to brake in a nice straight line down here, right next to the curb. And this is an interesting corner because you want to scrub off enough speed that you can turn comfortably. Okay, so about here you'll turn. So you can't really even see the apex properly. And you don't want to go really much closer than this. With the ST, because it's so tail happy, if you go over the biggest part of the bump, it will rotate you. Okay, so again, we got to think about the camber of the road, right? And what's the car's weight going to do when you upset it with the bump? So we get as close as we can to the middle over here, and you guys can see where I am if you want to bounce around the camera and look at the chase cam or something. So you want to
Sorry, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, please do.
My screen went away. I'm not seeing a presentation anymore.
Oh, it's because you're looking at me in the Discord. You should be in Assetto Corsa looking at Marcus.
Got it. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, do you want us to wait a second?
No. Go ahead. I'll figure it out.
Okay.
But that's actually a good minute to pause while we're here.
Sure.
One thing that I do harp on a lot when we're taking a look at a track walk is the orientation of the track. And so if you get a chance to watch the reference video and you take a look at going into turn 1 again, where Marcus is braking, that track crests from flat to downhill. So your braking zone and the approach into turn 1 is a downhill corner that is also a little off camber. So the weight of the car will be affected as you're getting on the brakes and as you're also turning into the corner. It's not flat, right? So one of the reasons where Marcus is placed where he's placed is because it lets the car load up naturally on the front tires as he's on the brakes, also unload itself as he turns the wheel of the car to enter the corner, and then gives the car enough room to settle back down so he has an exit. If you cut a curb or you end up too wide, all of that effect happens but in the wrong place, and so the car bounces everywhere. It gets hard to control.
Yep. Alrighty, so with where we are now, it's interesting because you can actually get on the power earlier than you anticipate you will be able to around this turn, especially if you are running slightly higher on the traction control. Okay, so I've been running 5, and I find that that's great to just help me rotate the car without sending me into an over rotation. Okay, so you'll be able to get on the throttle in first gear, and you can carry out pretty wide, even wider than I've gone. You could probably go out. You could even go over there and touch the white line. If that happens, that's totally fine. You won't really lose much speed doing that, okay? But you have to remember, you have to be on the other side of the track here for the upcoming corner. So I have a couple of references here. One is if you look straight ahead, there's this bare patch without grass. Does everybody see that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's one.
Yep.
The other one is on the inside of the corner where the curb starts. So those are 2 references depending on if you're next to a car or not. What do I do when I get there? I lift off the throttle and I turn in. And I want to be out as wide as I can to help me open up this corner. So see the curb became visible right as I came up to this bald patch? Those are the 2 references. So then I know, okay, now I need to be off the throttle, let the car just rotate itself. Don't need to brake for this corner at all. Just let the car go. And take this as narrowly as possible. And as soon as you see that crane over there is when you know you could probably be like moderately on the throttle, okay? And here again, you have to think about the camber of the road. There's a little crest here. So if you come over this with any kind of speed that's slightly too much, you're going to get pushed out way wide because the car doesn't have grip. The weight is all forward and carrying you away. So just keep that in mind. This corner here is about throttle control for sure. As you hit the throttle, the understeer from the corner will naturally push you out to here. It's okay to be out here on this curb. I wouldn't really go much wider than this, especially in quali. There's a narrow margin here. As soon as all 4 of your tires are past the white line, definitely that's going to be a non-valid lap. And it gets slippery out there. So just for the sake of carefulness, rather kind of stick to this area right here.
Hey, Marcus.
Yeah.
Before we enter this point, I was thinking about it. So one thing about this track that you'll realize as we go through the track walk is that there's a lot of places where it's effectively like a single line or maybe 2 when you're running with multiple cars. And so that first turn 1 heading into turn 2 section, maybe even going into turn 3, is a really good place for you to be aware of the cars around you and try to kind of stay close to cars rather than trying to overtake cars. There's a larger changes in speed. The track narrows up in a lot of places. You're already delicately balancing the throttle with your own car by yourself. And so it can get kind of tricky if you try to force the issue with multiple cars in this tight section in the Mercedes arena, because there's just not a lot of places for the cars to go. You see a lot of people getting run into down here because they try to like eagerly get down to the beginning part of turn 3 before something happens, or they try to make some bold move in the middle of turn 1 after we've finished braking. And those moves just don't really come off. This track doesn't really play friendly to that sort of stuff. So, be mindful when you're running with other cars that sometimes you'll just have to kind of give them a little more room than you might on another track like Silverstone or something, where there's lots of room for you to just be around everywhere.
Yeah, and something to be mindful of. So the long straight, start-finish straight, is an excellent overtaking opportunity. If you get a better exit out of the last turn, down into that corner, the first corner, is a great overtaking opportunity. But you have to know, if you are side by side with someone, they are going to win turn 2 because they'll be on the inside and it's a camber that's not in your favor. So just be mindful of that and stick to your lane if you are next to somebody. Coming down into this next turn here is a common place, like Davin said, where people will run into each other. And the reason is because you try and brake at the same place when you're on the inside as when you're on the normal racing line. And typically what will happen is you'll run into the side of somebody because you won't be able to slow down enough and make the turn, because all of a sudden the turn is way tighter for you if you're on the inside, right? Alrighty, so yeah, after that quick plug, next braking point, I don't know if you guys are in my cockpit, but do you see there on the left hand side there's another runoff road? As soon as my A pillar, so I'm going to move forward just a little bit, covers that like this, that's when I brake for this next turn. And the ideal line is interesting. You want to be as tight as possible to the inside curb here so that you set your exit up for the next corner. So if you're side by side with somebody, you have to remember that, because you're going to want to go narrow, but if there's a car there, you're going to have to go wide, and then you really mess up your entry into turn 4. Okay, so ideal line, you brake like this down towards here, trail braking, and then you can put your inside tires on this curb and even on the concrete. It'll help you rotate the car. Just be careful, ride the throttle. You'll be in first gear again. So ride the throttle around here and stay super tight, like way up here. You'll be able to get on the throttle fully into first. The car will tell you it wants to go into second, by the rev range. As you change into second is when you turn for this next corner. So while you're going straight, change into second, and then as you're rotating, come back off the throttle. You can use this curb on the inside if you want to. I would not be on the throttle here, just kind of ride it very gently, and then as you're exiting you can totally get back on the throttle here, and it's going to push you out wide. You can use this area of the track right here. By the time you get to about here, if you've done that pretty well, you should be in third gear. Alright, any questions about that? That is probably the most difficult complex of things on this track.
Yeah.
Sorry, how much of that track can you actually take, because it gave you the red timer thingy? You went off track now.
So just a little bit less than I did. I was just trying to show you can really use that space.
All right.
So just a teeny bit less than I did, and you'll see you can hit that pretty consistently once you figure out how to exit that turn. So yeah, you'll see at speed it's pretty easy. You get pushed out a certain amount, and then as long as you just don't have all of your tires like way off track, then you'll be fine.
There's something important about that I would keep in mind, though. It's the difference between qualifying and racing. So when qualifying, of course, we want to keep our car within the track limit so we can get the qualifying time banked in. But in the race, there are some times where you can be a little bit outside the line, and it's okay, right? Turn 4 is one of those, especially if I'm trying to set something up later down the lap, where maybe my entry was slightly less than ideal, or maybe my apex was a little too early, and I'm going to slightly run off track. it is always better to let the car just slightly roll over that exit area. And ACC will give you a little bit of a track limits to wag, but it won't penalize you. Right? There are a couple areas on the track where if you do that consistently, it'll give you I think a 5-second penalty or something else like that. But this isn't one of them. I think of like a turn 4 in Hungary, where it counts it as cutting the track multiple times. Turn 4 here is not one of those. So don't get yourself to such an anxiety that if you go through turn 4 and you feel like you're going to slightly fall off track, that you have to do something sudden like jerk the wheel or pull the car back. Just roll it out and roll it back in. That entire complex is all about setup. So rather than trying to pass cars into 1, 2, 3, and 4, set them up for passes into 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Yep,
Gotcha.
totally agree. Alrighty, so the next turn, which is this pretty fast left-hander, these cones are not good markers, but this track here for the short version of the track is a good marker. So you can use the close side or the far side or just the road in general. I use the far side, but I understand that a lot of people will not want to brake that late. But yeah, so there's multiple gradations that you can take here. You'll be in 4th or 5th by the time you get here, probably in 5th, and the turn ahead will be a 3rd gear turn. So you want to brake, and remember here the camber here is in your favor, right? So you can carry more speed than you expect. So go down into 3rd, be near the inside curb. And for this next corner, there's 2 ways that people will take it. Larry has been teaching folks one, I like the other. So it's really just about where you position your car on track and where you carry your speed. So if you want to go a little bit faster through this turn, then you'll be more on towards the middle of the track. If you go a teeny bit slower through this turn, then you'll be more kind of where I am. I like being here because it's basically a single file section. Nobody wants to go through that turn too wide. And if you do, you have a lot of faith in the person who's next to you. So I like being way up here next to the curb because the end of the curb over here is my marker for braking into this next turn. All of you guys, maybe in your individual practices or whatever, can maybe do just a free cam to look at what this turn looks like. It's a bizarre corner. It sharpens, it closes in on you. So the point where you start accelerating and turning is different than you would expect going into it, because it looks like it just turns like a 90-degree bend, but it's actually closer to a hairpin, honestly, like a closing hairpin. Yeah.
Also, too, if you're in Marcus's car from the driver cam, you can see this track goes downhill. It is off camber, and the gradation of the road, the grade of the road, increases as you go through the corner. So it's almost like going down like a roller coaster hairpin. Right, like these tracks aren't flat, and like we talked about this in an earlier clinic, where when you're moving at speed, what the brain tends to do is it tends to just omit information that's not important. And for some reason, track elevation is one of those things for a lot of folks, where in their mind at full speed, the corner just seems like a flat hairpin and should be easy. But as you see sitting here, there's a lot of dynamic forces applied to the car that change like where you set up, where you turn in, and how long and how late you can. So going slow on reconnaissance laps can be really, really helpful for letting a track fast, because when you've got multiple cars around you, you won't remember that this track curves downward.
Exactly. So yeah, as you guys start lapping, what I would recommend is braking before the end of this curve, just to see how you can go through this corner faster, and then as you figure out what the corner is doing, start braking a little bit closer towards the end of the curve. Because you'll see it's really a challenge to get a good exit, and this is another overtaking opportunity down into the hairpin, so you want to be able to do this as best as you can. I brake kind of to here and apex late because the corner closes on you, or it gets tighter, that it turns more towards the end, and then I turn in using the camber of the road where I can, so that my nose is pointed towards the exit by like here, and then you can almost slam on the throttle. I am in 2nd gear, by the way, through there, and the speed that you carry will carry you out here. You can use this pretty freely. If you get your tires on the inside close to the white line, you'll be encroaching on track limits. This is a very easy place to violate track limits. All right, we're gonna go down here. Through the hairpin, there's a few different routes that you can take. I obviously like the way that I take the most. Everybody will say it. Devin might have a different approach. My braking point, so see this concrete that's next to the white line on the outside of the track? About midway between the start of the skinny guy to the start of the wider guy out front there is where I brake. So right now it's kind of where the shadow, this little striped shadow is pretty much where I brake. Maybe a little bit later than that even as well. Down here you'll be in 4th or 5th again, and I take this hairpin in 2nd. So trail brake all the way down. I'm usually not really tied up against it, kind of like where these tire tracks are, I guess. And you'll be able to trail brake and coast through this corner more rapidly than you think, because here the track is kind of in your favor. It's very interesting. You don't want to get out wide here though, because the camber of the road out there changes again. So once you get out there, it's very difficult to pull yourself back in and get on track. So just be very careful and be mindful if you get wide or too wide and you're out there, there's no grip and you're probably going to end up going off. So just be slow and steady when you try and correct yourself.
So that all being said, turn 7 is a good passing opportunity if you can get enough momentum out of turn 6 early enough.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things we'll say in a lot of the coaching clinics often is try to pass when the pass is the easiest, not when it's the hardest. The closer to the braking zone you try to commit to an overtake, the harder it is for everyone, because it gives you less time, it gives your opponent less time to adjust if they lose the battle, and it makes it more likely you're going to hit somebody because you're all kind of guesstimating at the last bit. So if coming out of the corner previous, you can get good traction coming out of the corner and get a run and show yourself early enough, then you have a lot of command over the corner when you get down here. Because as Marcus said, like, I don't need to be in front of him, I just need to be next to him so I can hold him out wide into an area where he has low grip. And that naturally will make him go a wider distance and also will slow him down so he doesn't fall into the sand, and I can accelerate it away from the corner. I do not need to wait until that last bit by the shadows in the braking zone to make a move down there. Because as you've seen, like the track, again, track elevation, track direction, track configuration, right? The track cambers one direction, it narrows before you turn, and now you're going in with 2 cars trying to negotiate to the same spot because the overtaking car has waited too long to present itself. Right? A lot of open lobby crashes you see are because of people trying to be Senna, right? And they wait for the last minute to make a pop as if it's going to surprise people. Overtaking is basically a negotiation where the person being overtaken realizes he's lost with enough time for both cars to make it through safely. Yeah. Right? And so you want to give enough visibility. It's a good important thing. It's good car communication to get up alongside someone and be like, "Hey, bro, I'm here. You've been going slowly enough that I can get up alongside you. You now need to wait," right? So that you both can adjust. If you wait till the end, it's a guess. Maybe I have good reflexes. Maybe I'm not a jerk, right? Maybe it's a whole bunch of other variables that will reduce the percentage of you actually being able to make it to the corner safely. It's what we call a low percentage pass.
Yep. So. And people will use Senna's quote a lot, the whole thing about going for a gap. If you don't go for a gap, then you're not a racing driver anymore. But he meant that like as in a higher level way, in terms of if there's a gap that exists that a racing driver can take, not someone driving on the racing line and the inside is wide open from like a second back. That's not a gap. So yeah, just be mindful of that. You create the gaps by outdriving the person ahead of you effectively, right?
Right.
Alrighty, so with this corner, you'll be just very gently kind of riding the throttle. I'm usually in 2nd. If you guys slow down a lot, you might be able to justify 1st, but just know that once you get on the throttle in 1st, there's going to be a lot of torque and the car is going to want to rotate. Whereas in 2nd, you have a little bit more leeway. You'll be kind of riding. Something I should point out, sorry I forgot because we talked about something else, but the curb on the inside here on some cars is fine to touch. With the ST, the curb on the inside of these turns tends to pull you off track and make the car want to spin. So just be mindful of that. A lot of the driving with the ST is maybe a little bit further away from the curb just for safety than you would necessarily have to be with other cars. Okay. Here, you can be on the throttle earlier than you can expect. Again, look at the camber, right? It's in my favor. So that means I can use the grip that my car's going to have, the excess grip that my car's going to have to get on the throttle, as well as the traction control, right? It's a tool that you can use to get on the throttle before somebody else does. So you could pass somebody in this little straight leading up to the S's, but I would not advocate going into the S's next to somebody. So by here you could probably be close to, if not on full throttle, as you exit. Because again, you can use the track, you can use the camber, and you can use this curb right here. I've seen a lot of you guys have not been using this curb, but it's very useful because you'll be going way faster than the person ahead. Okay. Up into the S's, you just want to slowly cross the road. Again, you never have to make sudden movements, right, to correct your placement on the road. It's very gradual, just kind of ease your way over here. I tend to touch this curb, just put my outside tires on this curb because it tells me I'm using as much of the track as I can. And with the ST it's stable, so that's fine, don't worry about it. Before you start turning in, so around here you'll be third, fourth gear, probably changing up into fourth as you enter the S's.
Marcus?
Yeah.
May I make a point here
Please.
about what you're saying?
Please.
You mentioned previously on the right-hand curve that it's dangerous to touch the curb because it has a tendency to pull you off.
Yeah.
But here you're using the curb, and you can get away with that, if I'm thinking correctly, because the curb goes straight.
The
It
curb
doesn't pull you off.
Exactly. The curb is straight, it's not turning. And if you look at the curb in front of me, you see it's black and discolored. That's because as the track rubbers, ACC assumes people are using this, and people do use this. So there's grip here that's similar to the road. The problem with some cars is that it'll bottom out over some of the curbs as well, so that's a separate issue to what the ST has. The ST loses grip over some of the curbs on the when you're turning, whereas here there's more than enough grip, and the car doesn't bottom out, so you're all good.
One other thing I'll add to that too is that it's the difference between an inside curve and an outside curve.
Right.
So, the curve we were talking about before when we were going through turn 7 is an inside curve. The car is already turned, it's already loaded up on the outside, and now on the inside of the car, we're adding an additional upward force of a curve. So we're already leaned over, and I've just basically kicked you on the inside leg. You're going to fall over, right? Where going in the Schumacher S, we're on an outside curve, where the curb is on the outside, almost acting like a guardrail that I can push off of to go into the next corner. So I've got a support barrier to use, right? So when you're thinking about like which curb should I use and which curb shouldn't I not use, it's always advisable to think about what is the force that is being applied onto the car, and will it benefit the car to have that force applied onto it to go faster.
Well said, buddy. Wow. Yeah.
Is the rolling resistance provided by the curbs read off by the computer as more than the road surface? Is there more drag to the curbs than there is the road surface?
Yes.
Does it affect tire wear?
Not dramatically not of note, no. Not for stints, right? So normally people will talk about stints being about an hour. So for a half an hour race like you guys are doing, you really don't have to think about tire wear unless you are literally lighting them on fire. Unless everything is red and totally messed up, you've messed up the grip, everything is bad. You don't have to really worry about tire wear all that much.
Do you have to get worried? What's the limit on them? Do you guys on endurance races start to run less curb when you're turning, or just kind of do the same thing and plan for it in the pit?
No, I just do the same thing.
Well,
Okay.
it's also more about car risk, right? Well, at least from my perspective, it's more about car risk. So
Yeah,
back
totally.
to what I was saying earlier about forces applied to the car, right? If I'm loading my car up in a corner and I continuously hit a curb over and over and over again, I'm putting upward momentum on the car, which more likely is likely to bounce it, right? I'm putting more stress on the tire because I'm forcing the car over to do a thing. And there's also the opportunity for driver error. I may not hit that curb in the same way every single time, right? And so every time I hit a curb, I'm taking a risk that the outcome will be just as good as the input. So in an endurance race, it may not be worth it to do that over and over and over and over again, because if I get it wrong, I may lose more time somewhere, or there'll be a car next to me that might see an opening that doesn't exist, or in a small percentage areas, that is an area where I might use as a trump card, where if other cars around me aren't using that area, I don't want to show them too early. And so sometimes on some tracks, there are some curbs that I won't use unless I really want to close up on someone and I'm just throwing down the ace and I just need it. But I won't do it on a normal lap because I don't want the guy behind me trying to emulate the thing he doesn't understand, or somebody tries to cut that curb behind you because I saw ADVAN do it, and they run right into the back of you because they're missing that last little bit of like how I slowed down or how I made a small adjustment to the car to make it easier for me, like a setup change, right? So you want to be mindful of curbs as far as car risk because not every curb is created equal.
Yeah, that's fair. I would say though, if you're doing single stints during an endurance race, you don't have to think about it that much because again, by the time you finish your hour or hour 15 minutes, the tire wear is there, but it's not dramatic. It's just like driving on somewhere between an optimum and a fast track.
Okay.
So it's still good. It's still fine. So
Okay.
for one stint, you can totally push. If you're doing double stints, now you really have to think about tire conservation because if you go nuts and sprint race, then you're going to have a really tough like last half an hour to your last stint. So it depends. I think the answer is it depends. I think the most important thing is you getting into a rhythm. So if you're doing whatever kind of race and you're expecting to just do same length stints where you don't have to think about too many things, that's great because then you can just do the same thing or as close to the same thing as you can lap after lap and get into a groove. And you'll see that happens in an enduro race. Whenever you get past like an hour or so of driving, even if you pit in between, you get into this kind of robotic groove where it just kind of goes by, kind of like if you zone out while you're doing an activity or something every day, right? Kind of the same thing happens when you're doing an enduro race.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, use this curve to kind of push yourself towards the inside. I will be in fourth by this point, and I will lift off the throttle just to get the nose of the car to turn in. This inside curb is a dangerous one again in the ST. Some cars, especially front engine ones, will be able to take this curb, like the Bentley or whatever. You'll be able to mount this curb. Even the Ferrari mid-engine GT3, you can mount this curb, but in the ST I wouldn't. You're gonna hit it 2 laps, and then the 3rd lap you're gonna spin.
One other thing too with that is level of downforce between the ST and GT3 cars. So this is a high-speed corner with a lot of load on the car. So in your traditional GT3s, you'll have a little bit more downforce to play with. And so you can get away with kind of throwing the car in. Like I drive the Aston a lot through here and the Ferrari a lot through here. And I can kind of lean on downforce to really just carry speed into the corner. The ST is kind of like a baby GT3 car where it's got like GT3 horsepower but GT4 driving dynamic. So when you're setting up for this corner, like this whole track is largely about setup, but especially here when you're going in at such a fast speed, it's really easy to kind of misjudge an area of the track and not have the overall downforce to just kind of not think about it. So as you clear this complex, you may want to consider, giving yourself a little bit of margin as you're going through at full speed so that the car can accommodate, because it doesn't have the, particulates level of downforce that a traditional GT3 will have.
Yep. So I'll stay in fourth through this corner, and a definite indicator that you can be on full throttle is by the time you see the inside of the next part of the S. So you see the green Astro area or painted area and the next curb. By this time, you should be back full throttle, and you should be able to make the turn. All right. Honestly, you could be on full throttle a little earlier, but because you don't know the track yet and some of it is still a little on the blind side, I would just wait until you see the curb, and then you know it's safe. This one you can totally ride 100%. You can ride across this like this to cut this corner as much as you can. Full throttle, let the car go out wide. You don't want to have a huge steering angle. Let the car ride out wide. You can use this one as well. Again, exit curb, throwing the car in the correct direction, or the direction that you want. By the time I get to the end of this curb in this little concrete section, a little acknowledgement to me that I know I carried a good amount of speed through the Schumacher S is that by this point the car will want to go into fifth gear. So right around here I will be going up into 5th. And then here again you have to get all the way across the track. So this is a gentle thing. You don't have to, I need to be on that side of the track. No, you just gently come across the track and be mindful if there's cars around you. For this turn, you can use this way outside area. A lot of people will not. I've seen a lot of guys keep inside the white line, and you actually close the corner off to you and make this turn a lot more difficult for yourself. So come out nice and wide like this, and brake about here where I am. So there's this little concrete strip leading up to the 100-meter marker board. A little ways before the 100-meter marker board, or where the AstroTurf starts, you can knock on the brakes. And towards this corner you'll be going down into 2nd. You'll see again here there's an interesting camber, right? So you want to take advantage of this camber. You want to slot into the inside of that turn because that's where the camber helps you the most. This is another corner where it's really tough if you go deep to make the turn. You're going to go out wide, and that's why they have that runoff area of tarmac that's out there by the Fanatec board, is because if you brake just too late and you don't make this little swoop, you're going to go out there. This spot here is a good overtaking opportunity. It might not seem that way, but people will not take the S's very well, and it's very easy to have a bad run through the S's, where if you lift off or go down into third, for example, because you've lost so much speed, the car behind you, if they take it like we just described, and they come up there and they're ready to go into fifth, they're going to have a lot of kilometers an hour on you, and they'll be able to pass you down into here. So just be mindful of that. But you have the advantage because you can come way out wide if you have the outside of this turn, if they manage to steal the inside. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, too, it's also a tricky negotiating area if you happen to be slow going into it, because there's always this challenge of ego amongst drivers when going into a braking zone. And this is an area where I always identify it as a high ego area, because the guy behind you's in fifth, and let's say you're in fourth, and they're coming ahead of steam, but you're kind of late into the corner, and you're about to get on the brakes, then what do you expect this guy to do, right? He's going to come charging down the inside of here at full speed, locked up, and said, oh, I had you going into the corner.
Probably go deep.
And probably go deep, yeah.
So
yeah.
So yeah, you can do it. You can set yourself up for a cutback if you have somebody on the inside in anticipation that they're going to outbrake themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, you just brake a little bit earlier so that you can turn narrow as the tail of their car passes your nose.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Another thing you mentioning, which is not blocking, is just not enter the corner all the way from the outside. You have the right to make one move when setting up from the corner, no matter where you want to. If you want to do it at the bottom of the corner, fine. You want to do it in the middle of the track, fine. You want to do it in the outside of the track, fine. But once you commit to that entry lane, you can't change. So one thing I'll do if I go through that section and I'm a little too slow is that I will enter maybe about a quarter of the way, like 3/4 of the way from the outside. Let's call it that way. That'll make it easier, right? I have to adjust my braking because I have to brake a little earlier because I've cut off a bit of the corner, and I'm gonna be a little slow around this corner here and be slow into the next section through 11 and 12. But I'll be leading, right? So I have command of the track at that point. So even if this guy comes in at a gajillion miles an hour, he can't hit my car, right? And so the likelihood of him trying to make this narrow dive is reduced, because he'll have to dive into the corner now to make it, rather than being able to make it kind of a normal style pass. So you've got some options of how to defend for this corner. It just depends on the person, right? Some folks are mindful and they identify it early and they're like, oh crap, I just need to be close to him. Other folks will definitely not do that, and they'll just right into you. So you have to be aware of the people that are around you when you're defending, because some folks just don't know the etiquette and they will still hit you anyway.
Yep. Exactly. So if you see the camber of this road is interesting. On the inside curb there is where there's the most camber in your favor, and then as you approach, the further out on the track you get, the more it sort of flattens out, right? You can kind of see that it kind of flattens out, and that's what makes this so hard to do on the outside, or once you get out there to get back on the inside. You can carry more speed through this turn than you expect. So where do you want to be? You want to be way narrow, right here. Most cars see all the tire marks across this curb, can use this. Again, the ST with inside curbs, it's going to want to rotate the car, which if you anticipate it is fine. But if you're not expecting it, you will spin very easily if you use the inside curb. Okay, so each of you guys can go experiment with that. I tend to ride just a little bit of the curb, and it'll help rotate the car just a little bit more. Again, because of the camber, you can carry more speed than you expect out here, because you've got all this road that you can explore. So it'll carry you way out here, honestly. And second gear corner, and by here definitely full throttle. You want to get all the way across the track, again nice and gently, to open up this corner for you as much as you can. So my brake marker, see where I passed it just a little bit, but if you see where the guy is waving his flag off to the left hand side there's a crane. That's my brake marker as that goes behind the A pillar of the corner of the cockpit. And I will be in third, so you'll exit the previous corner, be, full throttle, go up into third. I take this turn in third. Some of you guys might brake a little bit more, which is fine at the beginning, and go down into second. Just know that the ST doesn't like gear changes and turning at the same time. So again, anticipate that might be an issue. So I like third. You'll brake kind of keeping yourself out wide, because this is another one of those weird turns where you want to apex at the right time. And then you'll start turning and get your nose pointed towards the exit, like here. So here I can be on the throttle already effectively. So I'll slowly be getting back on the throttle in third gear, and you can use all of the track, including again the exit curb. Exit curbs here are your friend. I'll be way out here, and by the time I reach the end of this curb, I know I should probably be getting close to being in fourth gear. Alright, any questions about that? It's kind of a weird turn. No?
Ooh, I do
Yeah.
have one commentary though.
Please.
So this area of the track is a perfect example of what I'm talking about making a pass as easy as possible. I don't think I can find a
Totally.
better example on this track. You see how much road there is in front of you? There's a lot. And so if you can get a run out of the previous corner really well, you have a ton of time on full throttle where there's very little for you or the car to do. There's a big braking zone at the end, so we kind of know when the battle's going to end, and you can really get a run to set things up, right?
Yeah.
The later you wait going down this section of track, the riskier it'll become, because there's just less road. And in the very distance, you see the chicane of no two cars should go through at one time, Death Valley, right? It's a horrible place to try to pass down there because it's super, super narrow. I see a lot of people, they'll come out of that corner before, right? They'll come out of turn 11, and then they'll just kind of sit and wait. They had all this speed, and they just sit and wait. And then at the last minute, they pop out right in the chicane, right when we're going by the brake markers. And I'm like, we're going to crash. We're going to crash, and we're going to die, or I have to drive over the curb in the grass to avoid this accident that we've created for ourselves, right? So when you see big open stretches of road like this, it's like the Sound of Music, right? The hills are alive, right? Look at this area as a place that I need to really get cleaned up and get set up for good old runs, because if you can get a run on somebody, or if you can get a run coming out of this corner, there's very little people can do about it.
100%. This is an excellent corner to try and get as good at as you can, because of the amazing opportunity that it presents you. Now, if you get side by side with somebody anywhere on this straight, both cars have to be conscious of the fact that you're going super fast. There's a kink that comes up, and then it ends in a chicane, which is what I'm going to call a no passing zone, okay, for anybody who's not like an alien, because two cars don't fit through the chicane very well. And even this kink is really difficult. So if you are here on the outside and there's a car on your inside, stay as far outside as you can, because you want to give the car on the inside space, because if you don't, you make the kink too tight and they're going to go into you. No one's going to brake leading into this kink. Maybe they back off just a little bit, but they're probably going to go into the side of you. So two cars can go through here side by side, but the outside car has to be conscious of the fact and not pinch the inside car too much, because you're just going to cause an accident for both of you. Alright, so in the actual racing line, you would come really tight to this curb. It's going to push you out wide. You don't want to put a whole bunch of steering angle again, because that's scrubbing off speed and graining the tires. So just as much as you need to use all the track, come out all the way wide, and then just gently come back across the track. Out into this next chicane. Again, no passing zone. I'm highlighting that. The brake marker is interesting. These boards, 150, the 100, and the 50, they're all going to probably get taken out at some point. So don't use those. Okay, you can use them while they're there, but as soon as they're gone, they won't be there. Yeah, like lap 4, they won't be there. So the braking point is pretty much exactly between the 100 and the 50 meter marker board. Right, so just up front there. So you will see the grass. There's a dark patch of grass, which is nice to use in the daytime. I will use that. There's also, if you look a little bit more to the right hand side, there's a dude waving his flag. There's a porta potty thing, and there's that metal I don't know, thing for a camera mount or a light or whatever. That is another great marker that you can use to brake going into this turn. I would say, as you guys are practicing, brake a little bit earlier, because you need to get used to really yeeting this chicane. You can go so fast, so much faster through there than you expect, because you can use the curbs. Alright, so between the 100 and the 50 meter marker board here somewhere, start braking. You'll be in 5th probably, or maybe 6th, probably the high end of 5th. And I usually go narrower here in an ideal situation to set myself up better, because I don't want to turn a whole bunch and then have to turn back a whole bunch. You want to straight shot the chicane and use the curbs. Alright, so I'll come in like this, and 3rd gear. I take this in 3rd gear.
Wait, stop, Marky, stop.
Yeah.
So you see that big old turtle shell that you just went by? You don't need to back up. There's another one up here,
Yeah,
right?
don't hit
There,
that.
those are perfect examples of corners that people used to cut so often they had to add, concrete there to stop them, right? So it adds this disrupting force to the car, where it throws the car up on one side and it throws the car up on this, like pretty violently. Like I've seen people get launched off those curbs if they hit them in the wrong angle, because it's adding so much force with so much speed. So one of the reasons why we say that the chicane is kind of a no passing area is because your road is even more limited because of these curbs, these turtle shells, right? So that sucks. The other thing is that if you think of corners like the Schumacher S and a few other places that we talked about, like that a hairpin on the inside of Turn 7, they are less extreme versions of this when you hit that curb, right? Is that force is almost like a mini turtle shell where it goes boom and pops the car up into the air, right? Here, it just does it dramatically, and that's why we're always big on no passing here when you first get started. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to follow that behavior though. So
Yeah.
if you're in a place where you're driving through the corner and you're thinking about what we said, and someone behind you's like, I didn't go to the coaching clinic, I'm going to try to pass here anyway, and tries to attack you into the braking zone, sometimes it's better just to let them have the entry to this corner to see if you let them go. Watch them murder themselves over those curbings, and I swear 99% of the time they'll be on the grass on the outside, because they've gone in too narrow, they've gone in too fast, they hit the death turtles, and they kill themselves. So just let them get all out of shape and then pass them back later, and then we'll talk about it after.
Yep, and you will see, you'll probably be able to tell on the reference lap or the example lap that we posted how violently the car moves around as you go through this. That's fine. Even the steering wheel, it'll shake like crazy, but you'll be okay. So you just trust the car, and try and hit just the apexes. So don't overturn at all. And then here again, I'm trying to not turn as much as possible. So here again, just missing this turtle thing, you'll be all the way out here and be able to take this. A lot of people, you'll hit this little bump that you just saw me hit, where the grass lifts up. That's fine, you can hit that. Just know that it's going to whack the steering wheel every time. If you get a little too greedy and go slightly more towards the grass here than I am, you will get thrown more violently to the point where you might not make the turn, or you'll spin. You'll end up going into the pits accidentally. Okay.
Ooh, speaking of the pits, so this chicane, because of all of the drama that Marcus just described, is an important place to give cars space when you're following them. And we may have said it here, but I know we said it in other clinics. The closer you follow to the car in front, the more you're trusting of that driver in front of you. And so if you're going through a section of the track where the track is very dynamic and we'll throw the car around, depending on how well they're driving and how well their setup is, there's a lot of trust that car will do a predictable thing in front of you and won't just randomly fall off track or do whatever. This is a high-risk area for even the best drivers that they don't mean to. They just drop a tire or whatever, and they're out of shape a little bit. So you can easily find yourself in the back of somebody because they're just not right on their right spot. This doesn't apply here in these 30-minute races, but they will in longer races. Pit stops. So Nürburgring does not have a good area for you to easily slow down ahead of the pits, right? Especially if you're trying to come in on an in-lap as fast as seemingly possible. Just you can see where Marcus is sitting, right? There's no straightaway, there's no anything before they give the cars in front time to say, oh, that car is pitting. So it's always a good suggestion to give a car in front of you maybe, a breath of the throttle just to give a little bit of space if they decide to go into the pits, so that if they do it at the last minute, you don't run up the back of them, right? Because that'll happen often. You're driving around, you're going to go to make a pit stop, you smash the chicane, and for some reason you barely survive, and then you need to go into the pits, and you're like, oh crap, and you turn, and a car is right on the inside of you, and you hit them, right? It's always good to give space. If you're the car that's leading and going to go into the pits, try to see the distance of the car behind you before you commit to the pit lane, and either slow down like a significant amount into the chicane before you get to the chicane, so it's like telegraphing that I'm going to be going slow through here, or wait another lap until you have room, right? Because it'll happen if someone's chasing you super, super close, then they may not have the reaction time to get out of your way if you just dive into the pits at the last minute. So, thank you for coming to my tech talk.
Yeah. The other thing just to mention here is, so let's say worst case scenario happens and now you're side by side with somebody going into the chicane. The line that I just showed you is not a 2-car line. You can't do that with 2 cars, right? So you have to follow the road more like in a traditional let's go on our vacation trip and this is what the road is doing kind of sense, rather than I'm racing now sense. So just be mindful of that if you get next to somebody, or if somebody gets next to you going into the chicane. You have to know you cannot do what I just did with somebody next to you. Okay. Coming out here, again, you can use the exit curb, which is awesome because you don't want to be steering a lot when you're going so fast and doing turns, right? So throughout the whole chicane, you're turning just as much as you need to make it through there. Otherwise, you upset the rear end of the car, especially the ST. You'll know it's happening because you'll turn too much and then the car will spin. And then I probably turned too much. I need to change my line a little bit, or go maybe watch the video again or something like that. So you'll come all the way out here because you don't want to turn when you're going so fast with the ST. Here there's like a dark patch over here, and there's a tree up front there. I don't know if you guys can see that the tallest tree is what I'll use. So as it disappears behind the A pillar, that's when I'll brake. Alternatively, sometimes you can see there's a nice patch of dark grass, which you can't see that well right now, but there's a piece of dark grass over here that you can use as well. This last turn is interesting, and you want to think about it the same way as that odd uphill hairpin at Brands Hatch. Is you want to apex, basically, if you can see on the inside over there where the barrier starts, where the pit lane is, that's kind of where you want to apex. So you'll brake and still have space on the inside, because you'll want to rotate the car so that your nose at the exit, like over here, is ready so that you can get on the throttle. So you'll go down into second. So again, just to highlight again, chicane is 3rd gear. Don't go through there in second, because on the exit, when you get on the power, it'll want to rotate you. So just go through there in 3rd, even if it seems like it's bogging down a little bit. This turn is in 2nd. And from here on, you'll be able to gradually get back on the power nice and slow, because again, the ST, we all know it's tail happy. And by here, you'll probably be able to be full throttle. Don't turn as much as you need, and then out wide again. That is a lap of the Nürburgring. Any questions?
One thing to add, because it's important. So the theme of this track is setup. I can't stress that enough. This isn't one of those like yeet tracks where you can kind of just throw the car in and kind of figure it out and kind of make it go. You have to be mindful about what you're doing around the whole lap. And the last corner going onto the main straight is a massive area to set up going down to turn 1, right? It's not a corner you want to be too wide around, because you're both compromising yourselves and going slow. It's really a corner that you want to get the car well tractioned and, give it a good launching point to go down the straightaway, because you want to be able to get that pass done early to give yourself enough time to negotiate, right? A lot of people going into turn 1, back in the very beginning we talked about it, turn 1 goes down a hill and cambers to the inside. So a lot of folks wait to the last minute, and now they're stumbling down a flight of stairs trying to make a corner where a car wants to go the opposite way that you want it to turn, and they crash, right? Yeah. So it's always good to try to get the pass done right around here. Like for me, if I can't get the pass done by the time I pass basically by the flags, BMW, yeah, really actually by the BMW, to be completely honest, by the BMW sign, I'm not really going to try it, right? For me, the last minute attempt is maybe by whether he's waving the green flag. And if I'm not showing my nose like at that point, I might as well just give it up and focus on getting a good setup for like turn 5, 6, 7, and just get well positioned. Because we're just going to have an argument at the end of this, right? It's just going to be 2 cars that both are trying to go left, down a hill, down a flight of stairs, and they touch each other. So I harp on that a lot, because this track is a lot more narrow than you realize in a lot of places. And so you get this enthusiasm for like, woohoo, we're going fast. And then you go to brake, and then it's a disaster.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, so I will say, how do you set yourself up coming out of that last turn? Well, usually the person will try and defend the inside, so they'll compromise their exit a little bit, because they'll have to wait they have to turn more before they can get on the throttle. So what you can do as the car following is give just a teeny little gap, brake just a teeny little bit later, run just a teeny little bit deep, so that again you've rotated the nose of the car to face the exit before the other guy. And that's how you gain kilometers an hour on somebody ahead of you in an exit. Did that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. Any questions from anybody about anything?
Can you repeat all that, please?
No.
I would love to.
Actually, yes, we will, because it'll be on a recording, which you can watch as many times as you want. So yes, we can. Just not now.
And don't forget to click like and subscribe.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
got it.
And give us $50 for the Patreon.
Exactly. So yeah. So what I would recommend now, just because all this stuff is fresh and everybody's kind of
Itching to
digesting
go.
it, is, well, I would say really quickly go watch the reference lab, just so that you see a lot of the stuff that we just talked about, and maybe some stuff you'll be like, okay, that's what he meant, and then let's hop in and do some driving.
Because even the folks who are itching to go, remember, you have all week to practice, right? House of Practice will be open all week. So the Saturday, coaching happy hour is a good chance to get a very detailed look at this track that we normally just don't have the time to give during the week because we have jobs, right? So yeah, we'll have 45 minutes left, but then you've got the rest of the week to really knock this all out. So you're good.
Alrighty, everybody. Thank you so much.